know, I am Dr. Cinema, and you probably know Quachi if you're a regular on this channel. Really? Do you really have to be in a specific? Okay. I'm not okay. I know Quachi usually doesn't come onto videos other than Dr. Cinema Diagnosis, but he's a fan of one of the two films we'll be talking about today in this episode's movie Face Off. Well, that was wrong. This movie Face Off's episode. Gremlins versus Goonies. So both of these films are classic 80s films. One is about a couple of kids trying to find money to save the house of one of the kids in the group. And the other one is a horror comedy with a bunch of little creatures called mogwais turning into gremlins and just destroying stuff. They're both classic films of the time period, and I've been asked by one of my friends to do a movie face-off about it. And I'm not talking about Quachi, he's not the one that suggested this. But if you stay on this channel long enough, I am planning a review starring the friend that suggested this video, as well as several others. They'll be coming out sometime in the next couple months. So please subscribe, and maybe you can be one of the first ones to catch probably the biggest episode I'll do on this channel yet. But enough about that. Let's get into the 5-round face-off between Goonies and Gremlins. Let us begin. Round number 1, story. Now, the story of Goonies is what I just said earlier. A group of kids get together. One of the kids' parents is about to lose the house due to financial problems, so they have to move. So in a last desperate attempt to stop that, they try to find this treasure that's, according to local legend, buried by a pirate. And the adventure takes them to an underground cave area next to the ocean. They run into some gangster criminals. I'm not really sure they're actually gangsters, but they definitely are criminals, and they are a family. And they discover a pirate ship, and they save the day, basically. The story of Gremlins is a little bit different. I'm guessing college-age guy, he works at a bank, so he's got to be like college age. His father comes back home from a little trip just before Christmas and gives him a Christmas present, which is a mogwai, a cute little furry creature, so just like Quachi here. Now, of course, there are some rules of how to take care of the mogwais. Doesn't exactly follow all of them, and so they turn into these creatures called gremlins, and they let loose on the town until they are stopped by the guy and the one mogwai who hasn't turned into a gremlin, named Gizmo. Now, both of these stories sound pretty classic 80s scenarios if you ask me. However, the story of Goonies is a coming-of-age story, and while it does have a more darker tone than some other ones, it isn't really one that we haven't really seen before. However, the story of Gremlins is a little bit interesting, seeing it's a horror movie, but it's also taking around Christmas time, focusing on a whole bunch of little creatures that, despite turning into these monsters called Gremlins, are still pretty fun to watch. And it's basically a parody of some cliches and tropes, but also sort of homage to other ones. So, it's a little bit of a unique, different style, I'm going to give this round to Gremlins. You happy, Quachi? Good. Alright, let's move on to round 2, which is the cast. Now, the cast of Gremlins is basically focusing on the one mogwai that doesn't turn into a gremlin, Gizmo, the guy whose name I keep forgetting, and a girl. Yeah, as you can tell, I don't have really much of a memory with those kinds of characters. And while I don't remember the names of the kids from Goonies, they still have a bigger impression in my mind with the truffle shovel, $50 bill, $50 bill. I mean, they stand on my mind more. They actually act like kids, and it's really fun to see what kind of shenanigans they get into. And they're very likable. You root for them, and you fear for them when they get into trouble. And since the cast of Goonies just stands on my mind a lot more than the cast of Gremlins, I'm going to give this round to the Goonies. Now let's move on to the third round, effects and action. Now, there really aren't a lot of effects per se in Goonies, but when they do have effects, they do it well. They have the underground caves. They have Sloth, who is a physically deformed, not quite as intellectually smart as he should be, kind of guy that helps the kids on the little adventure. You've got the big pirate ship with the skeletons and the gold, and they do those effects well. As for Gremlins, the effects are put into the Mogwai slash Gremlins, and they do actually look pretty cool. And even if you really haven't seen the movie, you can tell just by look that they are Gremlins or they are Mogwais. They have a distinct style that stands out. And there is action in Gremlins too, as you can see, where Gizmo goes off against the Gremlins and such. Like vehicles crashing into stuff, explosions, even a little bit of a fight scene at the end between the head gremlin and Gizmo. And I'm not talking down the effects of Goonies. It is something to be admired. But if we're talking about effects and action, Gremlins has a distinct style and is very entertaining how it does it. So I'm going to have to give this round to Gremlins. Now let's move on to round 4. Atmosphere. Now, like I've said before, Gremlins is a horror slash comedy, so it doesn't really have to spend that much time on the atmosphere of the film, as it's just trying to be more of it like an entertainment kind of thing. With Goonies, of course, it's a movie, so of course it's entertainment, but it actually sets up an atmosphere of the town with the kids trying very hard to try to help their one friend out. The danger of the criminals that are chasing after them and getting to the goal before they do. The whole underground cave thing that the pirate ship is resting in is also part of this dark yet very adventurous mood that the movie has set up during the entire runtime. And it's something that has been loved by a lot of people. So I'm going to have to give this round to the Goonies. So we have a 2-2 tie so far. It's time for the final round. You ready, Quachi? Alright. Round 5. Legacy. It's not always easy to determine how great a movie's legacy is. I mean, both of these films have, like I said, have been 80s classics, but also classics in other ways as well. You see, The Goonies is also a classic of those movies that are about coming of age. And the classic of The Gremlins is that the classic of the horror genre, especially horror comedy. And that is also something that is very equally admired. Now, both of these films have been talked about doing sequels or reboots or some sort of adaptation of them. They all have this nostalgic feel that appeals to both this feel that appeals to nostalgic viewers and also younger viewers that haven't really seen it before. And it's very hard to determine which one is really better. I mean, they're both Spielberg for films, to be honest, and you can tell that style is there in both of these films. But then I did a little bit of research into the legacy and reception of the films, and even though they are very similar, there is a big difference when it comes to Gremlins. You see, while The Goonies definitely has that ultimate 80s classic legacy, Gremlins has that as well, but it also has a little addition to it. You see, Gremlins came out in 1984, the same year as Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, I think it is. It's the second installment in the Indiana Jones franchise. And even though they're both rated PG, there was a lot of violence and other content in the movies that got a little bit of controversy, I suppose. And both of those films actually influenced the MPAA to alter its rating system to create the PG-13. I mean, Gremlins is partly responsible for changing the entire movie rating system. That's something that not a lot of films can actually claim. And it's for that simple legacy on not just 80s films in general, but on films as an entire thing, I'm going to have to give this to Gremlins. So with a score of 3-2, Gremlins wins this episode of Movie Face Off. There, you happy, Quachi? You happy? Good. Well, that's all for this Movie Face Off. And sorry to the friend who suggested this, because I can tell he wasn't really that big of a fan of Gremlins, but this is what I have to go with. So, Dr. Cinema, like, comment, subscribe, share. See you next time.